There comes a moment in history when a people rise, not because the world allowed them to, but because they decided they would never again be defined by someone else's narrative. For too long, others have attempted to label, categorize, and box in what this nation is and what it is capable of. But identity is not granted. It is seized, forged, and declared with unshakable certainty. When a billion hearts beat to the same rhythm, no outside force can dictate who they are meant to be. Identity is the foundation of power. Without clarity of who you are, you live at the mercy of someone else's opinion. But the instant you declare, "This is who I am, this is what I stand for, this is what I refuse to compromise," the game changes forever. That is the stage India stands on today, not waiting for approval, not bending to outdated stereotypes, but standing firm in a truth so strong that even the greatest powers must acknowledge it. Think of it this way: every empire in history that has endured was built on certainty of self. The moment doubt seeps in, collapse begins. But when conviction becomes the cornerstone, when values and culture are carried like unshakable armor, then endurance is inevitable. India embodies that conviction. It is not trying to imitate others, it is not chasing shadows. It is building a future grounded in a heritage thousands of years old, yet propelled by the boldness of a new generation that refuses to play small. True strength does not come from what others give you, it comes from what you refuse to let them take away, and no matter how the world has tried to define it, as a land of poverty, as a nation of followers, as a culture that could be exploited, the truth has always been louder. The truth is resilience, the truth is creativity, the truth is adaptability, and now the truth is dominance in arenas once thought out of reach. This is more than pride. It is a declaration that says, we are not here to fit into your story, we are here to write our own. That kind of mindset is magnetic. It shifts the balance of power. It forces others to bow, not in submission, but in recognition. Because when a people know exactly who they are, they become untouchable. The world watches closely now, not because it chooses to, but because it has to. No superpower can ignore a force that radiates with clarity and certainty of self. This nation has found its voice, and it speaks with confidence, with strength, with authority. And once that voice is heard, it can never again be silenced. In the world we live in today, raw power is not measured by how loud your voice is or how strong your army stands. The true measure of influence is how much you create, how much you innovate, and how much the world depends on what you bring to the table. When a nation begins to set the terms of trade, when it becomes the hub of talent, entrepreneurship, and unstoppable growth, it no longer has to ask for respect. It commands it. For centuries, the greatest empires weren't simply those who won wars, but those who controlled wealth, resources, and opportunity. Gold, trade routes, industry, these were the forces that bent nations to their will. Today, it's markets, technology, innovation, and human capital. And in this space, India is stepping forward with a momentum that cannot be ignored. What does it mean when the world's fastest growing economy refuses to play the role of a silent participant? It means decisions in Washington, Beijing, London, and beyond are being recalibrated. Every policy, every negotiation, every alliance now considers how India's growth trajectory will shape the balance of power. Because when billions of consumers fuel a market, when a young, skilled workforce powers industries, when startups rise daily into unicorns, the world doesn't just notice. It adjusts. Money is more than currency. It is leverage. It is the invisible force that dictates whose voice gets heard at the table of power. And India, once underestimated, has turned its economic rise into undeniable leverage. From pharmaceuticals to digital innovation, from defense production to space exploration, it has proven that its value is not confined to one sector. It is diversified, expansive, and unstoppable. And here is the truth. Economic growth is not just about numbers on a chart. It is about dignity. It is about lifting millions from poverty into possibility. It is about transforming villages into smart towns, turning ideas into industries, and showing the next generation that they do not have to migrate for opportunity. They can build empires right here on their own soil. That kind of transformation doesn't just strengthen a nation, it makes it untouchable. When the world sees this kind of power, it cannot dismiss it. Allies seek partnerships, competitors rethink their strategies. Rivals recognize that arrogance no longer works. Because you cannot bully or belittle a nation whose economy fuels global industries, whose markets attract the world's biggest corporations, and whose innovation sets the pace for the future. This is not about revenge. This is not about shouting louder than others. It is about showing the world that influence is earned through contribution, through results, through undeniable value. When prosperity becomes a nation's shield, it doesn't just defend, it dictates. And in this era, that kind of force ensures that the world doesn't just listen, it bows. There is a turning point in every journey where the script changes forever. For decades, others expected this nation to play the role of a follower, obedient, reliant, waiting for directions from outside forces. They underestimated the willpower of a people who carried centuries of resilience in their DNA. What the world failed to understand was simple. A nation that has endured colonization, exploitation, and endless attempts to suppress its spirit cannot be kept down forever. The story is no longer about dependence. The story is about a nation that learned, adapted, absorbed, and then decided to rise. Not slowly, but with the unstoppable force of a tide that no wall can hold back. What once was seen as weakness has become wisdom. Every setback, every challenge, every era of struggle became the foundation for strength. And when that strength crystallizes, the tables turn. Look around the globe today. Strategic alliances are shifting. Nations that once dictated terms are now seeking partnership. Why? Because leadership is no longer inherited by default. It is earned through results, through vision, through courage. This nation has refused to sit in the passenger seat of history. It has gripped the wheel, set its course, and forced others to adjust their direction. This transformation is not accidental. It is deliberate. It is the product of relentless innovation, a fearless entrepreneurial spirit, and a refusal to remain confined to the sidelines. The very industries where it was once dismissed, technology, defense, space exploration, global trade are now the arenas where it shines brightest. The dependent has become indispensable, and make no mistake, this shift is not just about economic charts or military strength. It is about psychology. Once you stop asking for permission, once you stop waiting for approval, once you declare that your destiny belongs to you, everything changes. That is exactly what has happened here. The old image of fragility has shattered. What stands in its place is a leader whose influence cannot be denied. Power, at its core, is not given. It is taken. It is claimed. It is demanded through clarity of vision and consistency of action. And now, as nations negotiate, as alliances form, as strategies are written, one fact stands tall. Ignoring this force is no longer an option. The days of dependency are gone. The age of self-determined dominance has arrived. The world is being reminded of a truth it overlooked for too long, that the lion does not need permission to roar. It simply roars, and the jungle responds. What was once underestimated is now undeniable. What was once ignored is now indispensable. And from this moment forward, the balance of power will never look the same again. When people look at a map, they often see borders, divisions, and separations. But when you look at this nation, you don't see fragmentation. You see a symphony. Billions of voices, hundreds of languages, countless traditions, dozens of faiths, yet all moving forward with one heartbeat. What some outsiders once dismissed as chaos has revealed itself to be the greatest strength of all. It is easy to unify a small group of people who think the same, speak the same, and believe the same. But true power comes from building harmony out of difference. That is where this nation has mastered an art the world has yet to fully understand. Diversity is not a weakness. It is an arsenal. It fuels creativity, expands perspective, and builds resilience. Because when every challenge is faced by minds shaped from 1,000 different ways of thinking, no obstacle stands a chance. Throughout history, empires have tried to break societies by dividing them. They believed differences would cause collapse. But here, the opposite happened. The very things meant to divide became the very things that united. And that unity has created a force so immense that it cannot be dismantled by pressure, by intimidation, or by outside manipulation. Think about it. When a nation's strength is tied to sameness, it becomes fragile. Remove that sameness and it cracks. But when strength comes from variety, when it comes from an endless spectrum of voices, talents, and ideas, it becomes indestructible. This is why the world watches in awe. How can a land of such vast contrast stand so tall? The answer is simple. Because beneath every difference lies a shared belief in progress, pride, and possibility. This is not just about culture or tradition. It is about strategy. When you bring together scientists, farmers, engineers, artists, entrepreneurs, and spiritual leaders from countless backgrounds, you build solutions the world has never seen before. That is why innovation thrives here. That is why progress cannot be slowed. The fuel of unity is endless, and the results are unstoppable. And let's be clear, this strength is not passive. It is not something that sits quietly in the background. It is a force that shapes policy, that demands respect, that rewrites global narratives. Nations that once underestimated this land now realize that its diversity is not something to pity. It is something to fear, to respect, and to learn from. Because the truth is, when billions of people who look different, speak differently, and worship differently can rise together as one, what chance does division have? What chance does intimidation have? None. That is the ultimate strength, the ability to turn differences into destiny, variety into victory, and multiplicity into unmatched momentum. And now, the world sees it clearly. What was once seen as an impossible challenge has become the defining advantage. What was once thought to be a fracture has become unbreakable armor. And that armor is carrying this nation into an era where no force on earth can silence or weaken its march forward. The battlefield of power has shifted. It is no longer just about how many ships guard your waters or how many soldiers march at your borders. The new frontier is knowledge, innovation, and the ability to outthink, outmaneuver, and outpace the competition. In this arena, the ones who dare to lead in technology and strategy don't just participate in history, they shape it. What defines influence today is not brute force, but brilliance. Satellites orbiting the Earth, digital networks connecting billions, artificial intelligence solving problems in seconds that once took decades. These are the weapons of modern dominance. And in this field, a nation once seen as a consumer is now a creator. A nation once seen as dependent is now a driver of innovation. The script has flipped, and the future belongs to those bold enough to seize it. Think of space exploration. What was once the domain of a select few superpowers is now a stage where this nation has not only arrived but excelled. Missions launched with precision and excellence at a fraction of global costs have proven that efficiency and ingenuity can outshine even the deepest pockets. This isn't just science, it's strategy. It's a signal to the world that brilliance is not confined to borders. It thrives where determination meets vision. In the digital economy, the shift is just as clear. From mobile banking to artificial intelligence, from cybersecurity to cutting-edge startups, the breakthroughs are not just keeping pace with the world. They are setting the pace. 1 billion people connected through technology is not a challenge, it is an opportunity. And when that opportunity is harnessed with vision, it transforms into unmatched leverage on the global stage. Strategy goes hand in hand with innovation. Power without direction is wasted, but when guided with precision, it becomes unstoppable. This nation understands that influence is not just about building tools, but about deciding how and where those tools are used. From defense systems that rival the strongest militaries to digital policies that protect sovereignty while fueling growth, the message is loud and clear. Strength today comes from the mind as much as from the muscle. The impact is undeniable. The world no longer looks eastward or westward alone. It looks here. Every negotiation, every alliance, every global summit now has to account for the rise of a force that has proven it can't be boxed into yesterday's stereotypes. The ones who once dictated terms now find themselves adjusting to a reality they did not anticipate. A reality where ingenuity and bold strategy rewrite the rules of global power. This is more than progress. It is positioning. It is foresight. It is the courage to claim a seat at the table not by invitation, but by innovation. And once that seat is taken, it cannot be taken back. Because in an era where brilliance defines supremacy, those who lead in vision will always command the future. True power has never been about how loud you can roar or how aggressively you can threaten. It has always been about the legacy you create, the kind of influence that outlives your presence, the kind of strength that doesn't need to demand respect because it naturally attracts it. The most enduring leaders, the most unstoppable nations, are not those who rely on fear to control others. They are the ones who rise so high in vision, achievement, and integrity that the world has no choice but to acknowledge them. Fear fades, intimidation lasts only until someone stronger shows up. But legacy endures, and that is where greatness is born. When a people decide they will not simply survive, not simply compete, but redefine what leadership looks like, they create an authority that cannot be shaken. Authority rooted in dignity, in vision, in contribution. That is the kind of influence that does not crumble when challenged. History is full of examples. Empires that built their dominance purely on intimidation eventually collapsed under the weight of their own arrogance. But those who built their power on innovation, culture, wisdom, and contribution left a mark that not even centuries could erase. This is the path forward, to lead not by coercion, but by conviction. Not by demanding obedience, but by inspiring admiration. This nation today is proving that its strength is not measured by how many others it can subdue, but by how many it can inspire, influence, and uplift. Whether through science that redefines possibility, culture that captivates the world, or policies that command global respect, the foundation being laid is not temporary, it is eternal. And when that foundation is set, it sends a message that is louder than any weapon. Respect is not negotiable, it is inevitable. The beauty of true power is that it doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to constantly remind others of its presence. It simply is. And when it is undeniable, when it is rooted in resilience and proven through results, even the strongest opponents bow, not out of submission, but out of recognition. Recognition that here stands a force greater than intimidation, greater than fear, a force built to last. What makes this rise unstoppable is the clarity of purpose behind it. There is no desire to replicate the mistakes of past empires. There is no hunger to dominate for domination's sake. The drive is to create a model of leadership where influence comes from contribution, where respect is earned by example, where success is measured not just by what is taken, but by what is built. And when history looks back, It will not remember threats. It will not remember the noise. It will remember the impact. It will remember the era when a nation chose to lead differently, chose to rise above fear, and in doing so, force the world to rewrite the definition of power